I never imagined that my gift for writing steamy secret letters would drag me into a tangled web of lies, betrayal, and heartbreak. My life as a freelance writer had always been a safe haven, a place where I could let my words dance with passion and seduction. But on that fateful day when Robert approached me with a discreet commission, nothing would ever be the same. My name is Kimberly, and I've always believed that words could heal, hurt, and even change lives. I spent many evenings in the soft glow of my desk lamp, crafting stories that ignited imaginations and, sometimes, hidden desires. So when a mysterious message arrived in my email from a man simply signing off as Robert, my curiosity was instantly piqued. His request was simple yet dangerously alluring. He needed a series of erotic letters, carefully penned to stir up forbidden passion for a secret lover. There was something about the way he described his needs, gentle hints of longing mixed with a raw, desperate desire, that made my heart race with both excitement and unease. I remember our first meeting clearly. It took place at a quiet little coffee shop on the outskirts of a bustling city, where the noise of daily life faded into a comfortable background hum. Robert sat in a shadowed corner, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses, his expression a mix of mystery and melancholy. As he spoke in a soft, measured tone, I sensed the weight of secrets behind his words. Every detail he offered, the way his hands trembled slightly as he recounted his lost love, the subtle insistence in his voice that hinted at hidden depths, compelled me to listen closely. I scribbled down notes in my little leather-bound notebook, aware that every word I would later type carried more than just ink on paper. It carried the power to touch hearts and destroy lives. Over the following weeks, I poured my soul into each letter. The process was almost meditative, each phrase carefully crafted to evoke forbidden intimacy, each word chosen to both titillate and console. I wrote of midnight rendezvous, of secret caresses, and whispered promises. With every keystroke, I felt as though I were not only serving Robert's hidden desires but also exploring a side of my own heart I had kept locked away. Yet, even as my excitement grew, a quiet warning echoed in the back of my mind. There were small inconsistencies in Robert's instructions. An odd remark about delivery methods, a fleeting mention of a secondary address, that I couldn't quite piece together at the time. I worked long into the night, fueled by coffee and the thrill of anonymity. My apartment, modest and cluttered with books and memories, became my sanctuary. Outside my window, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the secrets being spun in its midst. I found myself both enchanted and slightly disturbed by the dual nature of my commission. On one hand, it was an escape, a way to channel passion into art. On the other, it felt like I was dabbling in dangerous territory, crafting messages for a love that was built on deceit. Then, one humid evening as I was wrapping up my latest letter, my phone rang unexpectedly. The screen showed an unknown number, and a chill ran down my spine as I answered. On the other end was a hushed voice, barely audible over a background static. "Kimberly," the voice whispered. "You need to listen carefully. Your letters, they're not going where you think they are." Before I could ask who was speaking or demand an explanation, the line went dead. My heart pounded in my chest, and a sense of foreboding overtook me. Had I made a mistake? Was there a hidden truth I had yet to uncover? I sat there in the dim light, trembling with uncertainty. In that moment, I realized that the simple commission I had accepted was far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The seeds of betrayal had already been sown, and I was powerless to stop the harvest of secrets that was about to unfold. With a racing mind and heavy heart, I knew that everything was about to change, and not for the better. I never imagined that a simple misdirection could spiral into chaos so swiftly. My fingers still tremble as I recall the moment I discovered the error. A discovery that shattered the fragile illusion I had built around Robert's commission. The letters I had so passionately crafted, each imbued with secret desire and carefully hidden truths, were not reaching the intended unnamed lover of Robert. Instead, they were being delivered to his unsuspecting wife, Betty. I had noticed a discrepancy almost immediately. The envelopes, though stamped with the proper postage and sealed meticulously, bore an address that did not match what I remembered from my initial instructions. My heart sank as I pieced together the puzzle. I reread our earlier correspondence, scrutinized the fine print in the instructions, and realized with mounting dread that I had been unknowingly fueling an affair, not for a clandestine passion meant for a secret lover, but for a woman named Betty, whose life was built on trust and honesty. Betty. Her name echoed in my mind as both a whisper and a scream. I soon learned that she was a woman of quiet strength and vulnerability, someone who had devoted her life to a seemingly stable marriage with Robert. I recalled a snippet from a conversation I once overheard in a local bookstore. A soft-spoken woman with kind eyes talking about her hopes and dreams. That image of Betty now stood in stark contrast to the betrayal she was about to endure. Days turned into restless nights as I wrestled with a surge of emotions. Guilt for being an unwilling accomplice in this web of deceit, fear of the consequences that might soon unravel, and a desperate need to understand how such a mistake could have happened. I began retracing every step of my involvement, from Robert's initial email to the final stroke of ink on the typed letters. Each detail was a painful reminder that I was part of a puzzle I did not fully understand. One crisp morning, as I sipped my coffee in the dim light of my apartment, I found a letter addressed to me in delicate, feminine handwriting. The envelope was unmarked by return address, but the contents inside were unmistakable. A heartfelt, urgent plea from Betty herself. In her careful, almost trembling script, she wrote, "Kimberly, I have received letters that have torn apart the fabric of my life. I must know the truth behind them. Please meet me at the old park bench behind Maple Street at dusk." Her words were laced with both desperation and determination, and they sent a shiver down my spine. I could not help but replay our initial conversations in my mind. Robert's vague instructions, his fleeting mentions of alternate addresses, and the unspoken undertones of his messages. Had he deliberately obscured the details, or was it a careless oversight on his part? The questions piled up, and with each one, I felt more entangled in a plot that was spiraling beyond my control. Determined to unravel the mystery, I began investigating the delivery process. I contacted the local post office, examined the postal markings, and even revisited our email exchanges, searching for any miscommunication or clue that might explain how Betty's address ended up on those envelopes. Every answer I found only deepened the mystery. I was a writer who had always believed in the power of words to heal or inspire. Now, my words had become weapons, unwittingly inflicting pain on an innocent soul. That evening, as twilight gave way to a starless night, I found myself pacing in my small living room, heart heavy with anxiety and regret. I knew I had to meet Betty. The thought of facing her, the woman who had become an unintended victim of this tangled affair, filled me with both dread and a sense of duty. I resolved to meet her, to listen to her pain, and to do everything in my power to set things right, even if I was not entirely sure how to begin. Just as I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation, the sound of a knock at my door startled me. My pulse quickened as I moved cautiously toward the entrance. Each step felt as though it carried the weight of impending judgment. Opening the door, I was met by the sight of Betty herself, a woman whose eyes were red from tears yet burned with a fierce determination that belied her fragile appearance. "Kimberly," she said softly, her voice trembling yet resolute, "we need to talk about these letters. I need to know why you wrote them and how they came to me." The raw vulnerability in her tone pierced me like a shard of ice. As she stepped inside, the sound of the rain tapping at the windows mingled with the pounding of my heart. I knew then that the storm we were about to face was only just beginning. As I led Betty to the worn couch in my living room, I felt the weight of every word I had ever written, and every lie I had unwittingly helped propagate. The air was thick with tension and the unspoken promise that our lives were now forever intertwined. Little did I know that the conversation that awaited us would unravel secrets far darker than I had ever anticipated. In the days that followed my meeting with Betty, a heavy tension settled over my every thought. I began to retrace my memories. Each moment with Robert took on a new, more dangerous meaning as I realized how little I truly knew about him. As I sifted through old emails, text messages, and the lingering traces of our in-person encounters, I uncovered secrets that shattered the carefully constructed illusion of passion and intimacy I once believed existed. I remember our first conversation vividly. Robert had an air of mystery about him. In our initial meetings at a quiet downtown cafe, his eyes would flicker with a mix of longing and sorrow, as if each glance carried a hidden confession. I was drawn to the vulnerability behind his reserved exterior. He spoke in gentle tones, each word carefully chosen to conceal more than it revealed. There were moments when his hand would brush against mine briefly, a fleeting contact that sent a shiver down my spine and hinted at the erotic undercurrent running beneath our conversation. Those moments, however, left me with more questions than answers. One evening, as I sat at my desk revising a particularly passionate letter, I recalled an encounter with Robert at a secluded hotel lounge. The dim lighting and hushed conversation had created a charged atmosphere where every look and whispered word felt like an invitation into a forbidden realm. He had leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear as he recounted memories of a love lost and dreams unfulfilled. In that intimate space, He had confessed how each word I wrote for him made him feel alive. His need to recapture an intensity long forgotten. His vulnerability was intoxicating, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to be swept up in the raw emotion of the encounter. Yet now I wondered, was that passion genuine, or was it simply a mask for the deception he carried? Betty's own narrative soon began to emerge through subtle hints I uncovered. In a series of intercepted emails that I managed to glimpse at through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Betty had been quietly struggling with doubts about her marriage for years. Her messages revealed a woman who had built her life on trust, only to have it undermined by a series of small, almost imperceptible betrayals. The erotic letters, which she had first thought were a token of her husband's affection, instead became cruel evidence of a secret that shattered her once solid world. As I delved deeper, the layers of deceit unraveled further. Robert's carefully curated words in our letters had hinted at a passion that could set the soul ablaze, yet behind that veneer lay a network of lies. Every time I recalled his persuasive charm or the way he had described a stolen moment in vivid sensual detail, I felt an unsettling chill. Had he orchestrated everything from the start, knowing that my writing would eventually expose a painful truth? The tension between loyalty to my craft and the ethics of truth grew unbearable. I found myself torn. On one hand, I was proud of the seductive prose that had stirred hearts, and on the other, I was horrified by the unintended consequences of my words. Betty's pain became my burden as I pieced together a timeline of events that suggested Robert had been leading a double life for far longer than I ever imagined. Late one evening, as I sat poring over old letters and memories, my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. "Kimberly, I know what you're uncovering. Meet me tomorrow at the diner on 5th, alone." The sender was Betty. The stark determination in her words left no room for doubt. She was ready to confront not only the lies but also me, the unwitting scribe of her heartbreak. In that moment, a powerful realization washed over me. The tangled web of secrets had grown too complex to untie by mere words on paper. Betty was now resolved to face both Robert and me, determined to expose every hidden truth, no matter how deeply it lay buried. As I stared at the message, I felt the cold grip of dread mixed with an unyielding resolve. The stage was set for a confrontation that promised to tear apart the fragile facades we had all built, leaving behind a trail of raw, painful honesty that none of us were prepared to face. The day of reckoning arrived on a rainy Thursday evening. I found myself walking toward a quiet diner on the edge of town, every step heavy with dread and uncertainty. Betty had insisted on meeting both Robert and me, a confrontation that I knew would change everything. As I pushed open the diner's door, the mingled aroma of coffee and fried food could not mask the tension that crackled in the air like static. I was already seated at a corner table when Betty arrived. Her eyes, red-rimmed with unshed tears and burning with betrayal, met mine with a mix of hurt and determination. Moments later, Robert appeared. His face drawn, the weight of guilt evident in the slump of his shoulders. The sight of him, so disheveled and remorseful, made my stomach churn. Before any words could be exchanged, an uneasy silence settled over us. Betty's voice finally broke the stillness. "Kimberly, I trusted you with your words, your talent, and now I see that trust was misplaced. How could you write these letters, these fantasies, knowing they were meant for me? How could you be part of this lie?" Her tone was sharp, each word slicing through the murmur of the diner. I took a shaky breath and replied, "I never knew they would be sent to you, Betty. I wrote them for Robert, for his secret desires. I thought I was fueling a forbidden romance meant for someone else. I'm truly sorry that my work has brought pain to your life." My voice faltered under the intensity of her gaze, and I struggled to find words that could bridge the gulf of hurt between us. Robert's eyes darted between us, and he finally spoke in a low, tremulous voice. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I needed an escape, an outlet for a passion that had long been buried. Kimberly's letters. They gave me that forbidden thrill, that temporary reprieve from my reality." His words hung in the air, laden with regret, but they did nothing to soothe Betty's raging hurt. Betty's anger flared as she shouted, "An escape? My entire life, my marriage, was built on the trust one placed in you. And you reduced it to an excuse for your infidelity? For your selfish need to feel alive?" Her voice wavered between fury and deep, aching sorrow. The storm of emotions intensified, and just as I attempted to interject with a quiet plea for calm, a voice from a nearby table sliced through the tension. A man who had been silently observing us rose and moved toward our table. His presence was unexpected and unsettling. "There's more to this story than you're all letting on," he said softly, but with an authority that demanded attention. I looked up, startled, as the man introduced himself as Wade. "I used to be close to Robert," he explained, his eyes cold and penetrating. "I know secrets about his past. Secrets that will shake the foundations of everything you believe." His words sent a shiver down my spine and deepened the unease that had been building since the confrontation began. Robert's face went pale. He stammered, "Wade, I didn't want this. I never intended for you to come back into my life." His voice was a mix of fear and desperate regret. Betty's eyes widened in disbelief as she demanded, "What are you talking about, Robert? What secrets have you been hiding from me?" Wade leaned in, his tone somber yet chilling. "Robert has led a double life. A life filled with betrayals and past liaisons that go far beyond these letters. There are debts of the heart and actions from his past that still haunt him. And tonight, they demand to be paid." The weight of his words left us all momentarily speechless. In the charged silence that followed, emotions churned wildly between us. Betty's initial fury shifted into a painful vulnerability, and for a brief moment, her hand reached out to grasp mine. The unexpected contact sent an unfamiliar warmth through me, a forbidden intimacy born of shared betrayal and mutual suffering. In that fleeting second, I sensed that beneath the layers of pain and anger, there lay a desperate need for solace. Yet, as the contact passed, the raw, unfiltered emotions surged back. Robert's voice broke through again, pleading, "I needed those letters to feel alive. Those words, they were my only escape from a life I could no longer bear." His confession, however, did nothing to mend the broken trust. Betty's voice rose once more, this time filled with determination and heartbreak. "Your words have torn apart my life, Robert. And now, with Wade's revelations, I see that your lies were only the surface. There is so much more hidden behind this mask of passion and deceit." Her eyes shone with a mix of anger and sorrow, demanding answers that none of us were ready to give. As the storm of our confrontation reached its peak, I realized that our lives had become entangled in a web of secrets that threatened to unravel everything. The diner, with its clattering dishes and muted conversations, had become the stage for our private tragedy, a tragedy that promised even darker truths yet to be revealed. Before any of us could grasp the full extent of the impending fallout, Wade's final words cut through the charged air. "Not everything is as it seems. This is only the beginning." In that moment, I felt an icy dread settle over me. What had Robert truly hidden? And how deep did this betrayal go? The night ended with Betty storming out, leaving Robert and me in a silence that was louder than any accusation. I sat there, heart pounding and mind reeling with unanswered questions, knowing that the true reckoning was yet to come. In the weeks and months that followed our explosive confrontation at the diner, life began to unravel in unexpected ways. The fallout from that night was like a storm that left our lives in shambles, forcing each of us to confront the truth and the consequences of our choices. For Betty, the discovery of Robert's deceit was a turning point. The betrayal cut so deep that she could no longer ignore the cracks in her once solid marriage. Determined to reclaim the dignity and life she deserved, Betty decided to take control of her future. I later learned that she began attending therapy sessions and joined a support group for those who had suffered similar heartbreak. Slowly, the raw pain of betrayal transformed into a fierce determination to rebuild herself. I remember the day she told me, over a quiet cup of tea in a small sunlit cafe, "I'm starting over, Kimberly. I refuse to be defined by his lies any longer." In that simple statement, there was a promise of new beginnings, a resolve to forge a path of healing and self-discovery. Meanwhile, Robert's world continued to crumble. The web of secrets he had so carefully spun had finally caught up with him. The revelations from Wade's unexpected appearance and the painful truth behind the letters exposed him not only to Betty's wrath but also to a community that once admired him. His excuses and pleas for escape, which had once seemed so persuasive, now rang hollow. As friends and colleagues began to distance themselves, Robert sank into a deep isolation. The charm that had once captivated so many was now replaced by a haunting regret, and his once vibrant life fell into a long, dark silence filled with remorse and self-loathing. I, too, was forced to face the heavy burden of guilt and responsibility. I had always believed that words were a gateway to fantasy, a way to explore the forbidden without causing harm. But in this case, my carefully chosen phrases had become instruments of pain. I spent countless nights questioning my role in this tragedy. How could I, a writer driven by passion and the pursuit of art, be unwittingly complicit in the destruction of lives? This inner turmoil pushed me to search for redemption through my writing. I began to work on a new project, a raw, honest memoir that would explore the depths of human vulnerability, the delicate nature of trust, and the unforeseen impact our words can have on the world around us. In the quiet solitude of my study, surrounded by scattered pages and half-finished drafts, I slowly discovered that true redemption comes from acknowledging our mistakes and learning from them. I realized that while I could never undo the past, I could honor the pain and the lessons it taught me by writing stories that embraced honesty, empathy, and the complexities of human relationships. I rewrote many of my old letters and ideas, transforming them into reflections on love, betrayal, and the possibility of healing. Yet, despite our individual journeys toward redemption, a lingering mystery remained, a final shadow of Robert's past that hinted at secrets still left unsaid. Even as Betty embarked on a new chapter of her life, and I continued my path of introspection and creative transformation, the echo of that long night at the diner haunted us all. It was a reminder that sometimes, the full truth is too heavy to be completely laid bare, and that some wounds, no matter how deeply they are healed, leave a mark that endures. As I sit here now, sharing my story with you, I am filled with gratitude for the hard-won lessons that emerged from the darkness. I have learned that our choices, once set in motion, can change lives in ways we never intended. But I have also learned that hope, resilience, and the courage to face the truth can pave the way to healing and renewal. Thank you for following my journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and eventual redemption. If you enjoyed this story and found it moving, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more tales of love, deception, and the power of truth.